On today's episode of Straight to Streaming, we're talking about the new Peacock original or
Yep,
exclusive, Sick, directed by John Hyams. Is that right?
I think so. I've never heard of him.
Never heard of him? No.
But more notably, sorry to the director, but written by Kevin Williamson, who also wrote Scream. I know he did last summer, Dawson's Creek. He's a legend.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah. The reason that they I was excited about this movie, honestly.
I didn't realize that until you and I were texting after we watched this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so Sick, the plot of it is due to the pandemic, so it's taking place in 2020. Parker and her best friend decide to quarantine at the family lake house alone, or so they think. Now, as I was watching this movie, I would have titled this movie as Sick or Too Soon. There was so many pandemic related things that I'm like, oh, I'm not ready to go back and revisit this. Like,
I know there was a lot.
like the whole wiping down all the groceries.
Yep.
With Lysol. I'm like, oh, I remember doing that.
I know it's 3 years, like that. It's only been 3 years, but it feels like it's still too soon a little bit. But also, I did find a lot of it really funny.
Yeah,
and it was similar to Glass Onion, where it's clever. Cleverly incorporated into a movie. This one obviously is a bit more. In Glass Onion, I think they included it because the masks, like the way that everyone's wearing their masks in that movie, kind of tell you who they are as characters. But in this one, it's obviously the whole plot is that they're fucking quarantining and staying in place at a cabin out in the middle of nowhere, which during COVID, it kind of makes sense that you would go somewhere remote and be alone. Of course, they post on Instagram where they're going. So
yeah,
maybe not totally out in the middle of nowhere with no one to know where they are.
Well, in this take place, I think in April 2020. So this was still way in really early into it. And so yeah, there was a lot of stuff that we still didn't know at that point. And yeah, just people we got to get away from everyone.
Aerosol sprays everywhere, the 6 feet rule. And that's why I think in the trailer when the woman's when she's trying to get help and the killer's coming for me, let me in the car. And she's like, I'm sorry, do you have a mask?
Yeah.
No, of course not. What? But I loved it. I thought that it was a really just fun way to kind of use that as a spin on a horror movie, which I thought was just really clever. It had a lot of Scream vibes for me, and I'm always here for that. So
yeah. So a funny thing is, so from the trailer, I thought this movie was going to be a horror comedy. There's some funny parts in it and stuff, but it's really more like a pure horror movie.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was going to be more comedic.
And I'm not mad about that. This movie, I really enjoyed it. But I definitely went into it thinking it was going to be one thing, and yeah, it was different.
I feel like it definitely caught me off guard a few times, which, as we've mentioned multiple times, is just my favorite. I love when a movie can keep you guessing. So are we allowed to spoil what happens, or?
Yeah. So here's your spoiler alert. I think we can say that we both really enjoyed this movie, and it's worth giving a try if you have Peacock. It's worth a watch.
Honestly, it was made me have hope for future Peacock movies because so far they haven't been that great. But this one really made me feel good about it. Maybe they'll come out with some more bangers like this. I'm hopeful now.
Yeah. All right. So spoiler alert is given. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that the different times that it's surprised me a lot, this movie, was the fact that first off, I think the biggest twist at halfway through was that there's 2 killers, not just one, which I was ooh, got some more Scream vibes. There's always at least 2 ghost faces usually. So that was cool. And then after that, obviously the big twist, which was from the trailer, that chick that she's trying to get in the car, that she gives her a mask and it has chloroform on it. And I'm oh shit, she's part of it. That was a big twist. And then the fact that it was her and her husband and their son, it was their youngest child had died of COVID because he was making out with this girl at a party and had died of COVID. And so they're out for revenge and killing everyone who was the problem. I loved that. I thought that was really clever.
I was super surprised.
Yeah, I didn't
'Cause
expect that.
in almost all horror movies, like, the killer is never someone that we've never seen before, and so, like, the whole movie, I'm like, "Okay, who are we gonna reveal that the
Yeah.
killer is?" And I'm like, "There's not really that many characters," and so I thought it was gonna be the neighbor,
Yeah.
and then he dies, and I'm like, "Oh, who is it?" And so, yeah, the reveal that it's the parents of the kid that we've seen several times just in that picture the whole movie, and that he died from COVID. I was like, "Nice." Well,
Yeah.
not that he died, but, like,
I'm really glad that he
I was
died of COVID. That was cool.
that was a good twist. I did not see
It
that
was.
coming.
I agree with you that I did not picture that when I saw this movie, like the trailers. I definitely was not expecting anything like that. So to have that twist with like them, I was like, that's really clever. And it's like a fun, like, I mean, it's not necessarily fun, but it also is like true things that happened there with all those kids having quarantine parties and infecting each other, and kids died. So, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of legit, like it makes sense, but I just thought, yeah, I was not expecting that at all. I honestly thought COVID might be incidental to the
Yeah.
plot and maybe just the device that got them alone
Yeah.
and quarantining somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So, like, the fact that it was like because of COVID, the ending, I was like, oh, okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes COVID a super important part of the movie.
Yeah, it's not just a cheap ploy to get people to where they need to be terrorized by a killer. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I'd still enjoy those movies, but I think just based off the first half until that, or maybe the first three quarters until the twists that you learn at the very end,
Yeah.
I kind of was getting vibes of like the movie Hush,
Yeah.
directed by Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
And I was like, the killer didn't obviously necessarily like mean to show up there and like, but he finds a woman who's deaf and thinks this will be fun,
Yeah.
and then just terrorizes her. So I was getting very similar vibes to that, and then they proved me wrong.
Yeah. I had another movie that kind of popped in my mind until the ending, Strangers.
Oh, totally. The Strangers. Yeah. Oh, good one.
Was like, oh yeah, this is a pointless violence. Like, there's no reason for why they're doing this, but then yeah, they have it. The funny thing though is that as I was watching, I was like, this reminds me of Strangers, except the killers are not good at their job.
Yeah,
Like,
and they're not like doing things that are particularly creepy on purpose, you
yeah.
know? But yeah, they're like, they did remind me more of the Scream killers in that sense, which is why I've always loved Scream, is because Ghostface is like usually a fucking teenager or like some kid, maybe like a 20-year-old at tops, but it's like they can't be, they're not a professional stuntman. So like him falling over and stuff like that and getting fucked up, I always enjoy that in a good slasher. And I felt like Kevin Williamson, I was like, I kind of hoping for that. Also the epic chase scenes he's known for, there was a lot of them. This, I would say the whole second half of the movie is almost like a chase scene basically.
Yeah. Well, and also like the director and the cinematography for this movie was great. Like that opening scene where he kills him in the room, like that was a great like long take, fight and everything. And I was like, I was not expecting this. This is a good way to start the movie. Now I'm interested.
Now I'm in. Yeah, they got right off the bat. I mean, every horror movie almost starts with a kill, but I thought it was, I agree with you, the cinematography and like the style that they shot any of the action / like chase scenes, those were really cool. And they added to like the frenzied, like angry, but like not necessarily tactical, like attacks, you know? It just kind of fit the killers.
Well, and then also even just like the subtle things, like when they're in the house and the killer just like walks behind them, and like you just see him look and then walk away, or just they're staring. I was like, there's a lot of just, it wasn't just like one kind of scare. There was a lot of different things.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, it was still commentary on COVID and that whole thing too, which I mean, I just expect commentary from Kevin Williamson just because that's like, I think he just can't not do that. So I enjoyed that aspect of it, but it wasn't like, I wasn't as meta as I thought it was going to be basically because of his other work.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad. I don't want a whole movie talking about COVID. Like, I liked how this movie used COVID just as essentially like the plot and the setting for the plot, but like it wasn't necessarily about it. You know, it's like, yeah, this was a horror movie. It was scary. It was about these people. I thought all the characters were really good. Like, I was like, you all actually seem like college
they
kids.
seem like, yeah, real people are real friends too. Like It was very different. I mean, I think this movie would have been fun to see with a group of people in the theater. I'm kind of bummed it just went straight to streaming, but like I get it. There's no like hook to really sell it because maybe a COVID movie probably wouldn't sell it for people. They're like, I don't need to see a movie with COVID in it. I'm good. You kind of got to surprise people with it.
I bet if A24 did it, they would have put it in theaters.
Yeah, but that's just because they're the fucking best. Not everybody can be them. Clearly, Universal does know how to market their movies. I'll give them that. But yeah, this one, it just seemed like they dropped the trailer for it and they're like, it's on Peacock next week. And we're like, what? What the fuck? Like, I've heard about this movie for like a year, like just online, people talking about how they've seen it at festivals and saying, oh my God, it fucking rips. It's so good. And I was like, so like pumped that it was coming in a week, but I was also like, damn, this movie could have been promoted a bit more. I feel like, especially after seeing him, like it's really quality. I don't know why they were worried about it. It's better than Smile, in my opinion.
Agreed. And shout out to Gideon Adlon. First off, awesome name.
Hell yeah.
Her as Parker, she was one hell of a final girl. She put up with some shit.
Honestly, there was so many moments that, like, in general, when you're watching a horror movie, I'm always yelling at the screen, like, no, just keep killing him. Keep going, bitch. He's not dead. And like different things. And I'm like, no, what are you doing usually? And this movie, I felt like I started to say that and then she would do it. And I was like, yes, smart characters. Fuck yeah. She was like really smart. And even with her friend, when she's like, play dead, I'm like, that's what I would be doing this whole movie. Are you kidding? I would be playing dead the whole time.
Yeah.
I loved it. I love seeing a smart character. And I think that was just great. She reminded me a little bit of Sydney Prescott, classic final girl, maybe the best ever.
Yeah. All right. And the timing of this movie is really great because we have Scream 6 coming out here in the next couple months.
Oh, boy.
Thank you, Kevin Williamson, for this movie and for all the other work you did with Scream and giving us the franchise. So leading up to Scream 6, we are going to be rewatching all the Scream movies, or at least in my case, watching for the first time several of the Scream movies because I don't really remember anything outside of the first one.
I know. I can't believe that. It's the best horror franchise in history because it has every movie is quality. There's not a bad one in the bunch. People used to talk shit about Scream 3, but now it's like got this fucking insane love for it. People are like, it's my favorite Scream movie. I'm like, that's a bit much, but okay. And it's the only one not written by Kevin Williamson until the newest ones, which is obviously written by the directing and writing team of Radio Silence, who also did Ready or Not. So, nice. You're in for a good time because that movie did have some good Scream vibes.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you love the Scream movies or if you are excited for the next Scream movie, then make sure to like and subscribe because I think we are starting with the first Scream next week.
Yeah, the first week of February, basically.
Just subscribe so that you get it. So,
yeah.
All right. That is it for this episode of Straight Streaming.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. We out here.